now, it's the Rob from 106.1 Kiss FM here with my tag team partner in broadcasting.
What's going on? It's Eric Cornish from WKDQ, and we start year 2 of the Enhancement Talent, and we appreciate you being here to talk wrestling with us.
Another themed episode, which I've come to enjoy these themes on. Sometimes on slow news days, we'll put together kind of like a challenge or some sort of interesting topic for us to talk about.
Yeah, you know, and everybody's doing their own fantasy booking with WrestleMania here, so what we decided to do today, we'll give you our own fantasy booking, but this is like truly fantasy booking, like any wrestler of any era, any venue, any announced name, the whole deal, and we're going to kind of put it together, at least 3 matches, and see what we come up with. We haven't discussed it with each other, so we've got our own cards. So would you like to go ahead and start off? You want to do your whole card first, then mine, or what? Back and forth.
Let's back and forth a little bit. Now, where do you want to start on the matches? Do you want to start on the venue?
Let's start on the venue and all of the things surrounding it. Where would you like to have yours?
Well, I want to mention a few venues that are special to me before revealing where I would actually hold the show. Venues up for consideration for my portion of this fantasy card are Philadelphia Spectrum, from the 80s and 90s, before it became the First Union Center and the Wells Fargo Center and what has become today. The Spectrum, if you ask wrestlers of that era, was one of the definitive venues in all of wrestling.
Sure.
And the Spectrum is an awesome venue, or was an awesome venue that no longer exists. Also in Philadelphia, I have a very soft spot, as you know, Eric, for the ECW Arena. Mm-hmm. I grew up not too far from the ECW Arena. It is small, it is danky, it is even worse than it looked on television. But for some reason, that little building holds a special place in my heart. There's also up for consideration, I thought of Madison Square Garden, which I'm happy to say I have seen wrestling in before. But it's not where we're going to hold this show. It is the world's most famous arena and probably the most holy ground in wrestling as far as venues go. But I'm going to pass on that one. Also thought about Skydome. I saw WrestleMania 18 in Skydome, and I thought it was such a beautiful building with that long TV and the roof that opens, and very, very pleasant wrestling memories in Toronto's Skydome. And then one last one that I passed on was actually the Manhattan Center. Which is, people may or may not know about me, is special to my heart because I used to live in the Manhattan Center. It's actually like the 5th floor of a hotel that I lived on for 4 months in the 27th floor of. So I actually did live in the same building as the Manhattan Center for a summer.
Maybe you lived like behind the big W or something.
For the Raw logo, yeah. Unfortunately, no, I couldn't get the ballroom. But where I'm going to hold this spectacular show is going to be in a place that, to my knowledge, has never housed wrestling. And if you put something like WrestleMania in there, I know it would do well. I'm talking about Beaver Stadium at Penn State University. Okay. I was in 2001, 2002, one of those 2 years. I guess it was 2001. Penn State's Beaver Stadium went from holding 100,000 people. They had an expansion to build 110,000 people. And I was part of the very first crowd, over 100,000 at Beaver Stadium for their first football game that season. And I kept thinking, because I was going to WrestleMania later that year, or I guess early the next year, how cool it would be to see wrestling in a venue that size. Very and they talk about 93,000 some, 70 some, that they might break it next year's WrestleMania. You won't have more than 110,000 people in that stadium. And I would love to see wrestling at Penn State University, not at the Bryce Jordan Center where they usually hold Raw, but at Beaver Stadium where the Nittany Lions take the field.
Very nice, very nice. And you know what? I had several of the same options that you did, one of which being the ECW Arena, which I thought would be interesting, even with like the biggest stars ever. Can you imagine like being there in that, it's such a small place, but very ravenous crowd.
No air conditioning, just one ceiling fan.
Yeah.
Or ceiling fans did the whole thing.
Awesome. And Louisville Gardens, very special to me. That would definitely be considered. Even I would say the Allstate Arena, formerly the Rosemont Horizon, there in Chicago. Great arena. But I'm going to go with the Garden. I think if you're going to have an amazing show, the Garden is where you need to have it there in the heart of New York City. The other one I did consider was the Tokyo Dome, which also huge for wrestling as well. But yeah, I think Madison Square Garden is where my event will take place.
Okay, so we've got to have a commentary team, don't we?
Sure, yes we do.
Who are you putting behind the booth or in the booth.
In the desk, two guys that may have worked together, but only briefly, and I think they just the untapped potential when two of the best. You've got the best play-by-play guy of all time. You've got the best comedy heel commentator of all time.
I wonder if we have the same team.
Jim Ross and Bobby the Brain Heenan.
That is exactly who I have.
There you go. Well,
so we can agree on commentators.
Sure. Yeah, it's there.
You take an early 90s Heenan and a late 90s Jim Ross, and oh my gosh, you've got a slobber knocker on your hands.
That is gold behind the microphone for sure.
All right, and then of course we came up with 3 matches.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of jots here because, well, I felt like it would be, I could keep using the same guy over and over again, but I don't want to do that. So I've got 3 matches here, and I'm going to start at the top.
Okay.
Because my number 1 and my number 2 favorite wrestler of all time are both still living, but have never wrestled one another. And I feel like their styles would mesh so well. I would love to see Bret the Hitman Hart square off with Kurt Angle.
Very nice.
I don't want to see it now, but
Right.
if you would have taken it, let's say mid-90s Bret Hart to early 2000s Kurt Angle, oh my God, would that not have been amazing?
That would have been great. Very, and I had a feeling that's where you were going with your main event there. I think that, I do agree. That would be an awesome event. On my side of things, I'm going with a match that we've seen before, but we never saw it in the prime. We never saw the two go at it when they were both at their best. And to me, I'd like to see a good 60-minute Broadway between 96 Shawn Michaels and 87 Ric Flair.
Oh, man.
How about that?
Yeah, okay. I like that. You said 96 Shawn Michaels?
96 Shawn Michaels, 87 Ric Flair, 86, 87 Ric Flair. That Flair's the heel, Shawn Michaels is the babyface fighting from underneath. That would be awesome.
I think that's I think we got a great card so far. Okay, so we haven't even borrowed any wrestlers yet, so we can use the locker room. I've got the next match I'm going to have is going to pit Daniel Bryan from today, or at least a year or 2 ago. And I thought you could mix him up with Bret Hart, it'd be a great match. You can mix him up with Kurt Angle, it'd be a great match. But I already used those 2 guys. I'm going to give it somebody new. What would you think about seeing Daniel Bryan square off against 2001 Chris Benoit?
Wow. Yeah.
I know I said a bad word in WWE terms, but come on.
Oh, wow.
How good would that be?
Yeah, that would be amazing.
So that's going to be my second match. Instead of Bret or Kurt versus Daniel Bryan, I'm inserting Chris Benoit.
The only other thing that I would insert there is, and I thought about it on my card, and I'll go ahead and spoil it a little bit, then I'd have somebody on my card 3 times. Maybe have Shawn Michaels going up against Daniel Bryan, prime Shawn Michaels, because then you got student versus teacher.
Yeah.
Would also be a very good match.
There's a lot there.
You'd think that would happen. But my second match here, and this one's a little further off the page, but think about the hard-hitting match that this would be. I'm using one of today's top stars, and definitely an attraction that everybody wants to see, against somebody that never really got the time that he should have in the U.S., but boy, in Japan was one of the biggest stars of all time. Can you imagine, with the amateur background and the hard-hitting style, as Brock Lesnar takes on Dr. Death, Steve Williams?
Oh, man. Look at that. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, usually the big guy versus big guy matches don't do much for me, but with those two, with their amateur background and how much legit, toughness is in them.
Their collegiate backgrounds are very similar as far as how accomplished they were, and absolutely. Yeah. That could be very interesting. Mine is going less, like my first 2 matches I felt like would be like technical showcases. Mm-hmm. This next one, not so much, but just would be like a Monday Night War mark moment for me. I want to make it a 5-on-5 Survivor Series match featuring DX. So you got Triple H, Shawn Michaels, X-Pac, I'm combining both DXs, and the New Age Outlaws, versus 5 guys from the NWO. You got Hogan, you got Hall, you got Nash. You can pick 2 more, whoever.
Put 6 in there. Can you imagine 6 going one-on-one with X-Pac?
Exactly.
Crazy.
I mean, how many Bronco Busters? There'd be so much crotch in the face.
So much.
It'd be crazy. But just like if you had that when the NWO was new and DX was new, yes. So right around WrestleMania 14 time for the NWO versus D-Generation X to round out my fantasy card.
Very nice. And I figured I wanted a tag team match on here because there's, tag team wrestling is such a lost art, and I would love to see 2 of the greatest tag teams put on a tag team match the way it's supposed to be. A lot of heat, hot tags, high spots, that kind of stuff. And I went with 2 teams that I don't believe ever crossed paths, and I am going to reuse one of the players here on this one. I went with the Rockers, being Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty,
right.
Taking on the Midnight Express and the version of Beautiful Bobby Eaton and Sweet Stan Lane with Jim Cornette.
Really?
Yeah,
okay. You don't want the new Rockers, by the way? We don't Leaf Cassidy and Marty
Sorry,
Jannetty?
Leaf Cassidy. You're out of this one.
I haven't put together a hell of a show.
But, yeah, I mean, how cool would that be? And, if you didn't want to reuse anybody, you certainly could take Shawn Michaels out of there and you could put in, a team like the Hart Foundation, for example.
I think so, too.
To go up against the Midnight Express. It just, that's like tag team wrestling at its best, and we don't see that kind of thing anymore.
Right on. Well, that was good stuff today, I think.
And who would be your ring announcer? Would you have somebody?
It's got to be Fink.
I would think so.
It's got to be Fink.
Yeah.
And I want that guy from the Attitude Era to doing security. What's his name? Doan? What was his name? The big guy with the hat?
Johnson. Something Johnson.
Whatever.
Michael Johnson or
whatever
something
that
like
guy.
that.
You know who I'm talking about?
I know exactly who you're talking about.
I want old dude doing security at my show.
Maybe a special added match. It's that guy against Doug Dillinger.
Right on, yeah. I definitely want Lee Marshall to do a road report from my show, and I want Mean Gene to do like a magazine report. I've got a whole.
Well, Mean Gene's he's got to stand up on that big box too in the back of the thing and interview somebody. Got to do that.
The sign can fall behind it.
Yeah. Anyway, there you go. That's our fantasy booking. We want yours too.
Yeah, what's one match that was has never happened, and you can mix and match eras that you would love to see? We'll talk about it on the next edition of the Enhancement Talent. For myself, the Rob.
And for Eric Cornish, and for the record, Bruno Sammartino and Mansmark just missed mine. But anyway, have a good one, and we'll see you later on.